Welcome to the Get to the Root podcast, where we build your health from the ground up. At Root Functional Medicine, we're on a mission to bring sustainable and validated functional medicine to the world. As a team of doctors and dietitians, we are dedicated to treating gut health, hormones, autoimmune conditions, and metabolic health at the root cause through advanced testing, food as medicine, and telehealth programs. For years, we've been helping people get to the root of their health concerns. Now, we're here to share our knowledge so you can benefit too. Stay tuned and join us as we get to the root.
Welcome back to the Get to the Root podcast, where we dig deep into the why behind health symptoms and explore functional medicine in a real, sustainable way. I'm your host, Dr. Erica Armstrong. Today, we're talking about something that is foundational but often overlooked: your relationship with food. In functional medicine, we know nutrition isn't just about what you eat. It's about how you feel about food, how your body responds to it, and how that relationship shapes your health over time. Struggles with food aren't always rooted in body image or eating disorders, though those matter too. Sometimes it's the fear of symptoms flaring up: joint pain, bloating, rashes, itching, or maybe it's childhood food rules, being forced to clean your plate, or the daily fear-mongering we all see on social media. At Root, we believe in an add, don't restrict mindset. The goal isn't to whittle your diet down to just a few safe foods, it's to expand it, to help your body tolerate and thrive on a wide variety of nourishing options. Because if your eating plan isn't sustainable, it's not going to work long-term. Food should feel empowering, not exhausting. So in today's episode, we're unpacking what it means to have a healthy relationship with food and what to do if yours needs some healing. Our guest today is Lauren Hanson, a functional registered dietitian here at Root. Lauren has a background working with people who've dealt with eating disorders, gut issues, and food allergies, so she really gets how complicated food can feel sometimes. When we were looking for a dietitian to join the team, we were so excited about everything she brings to the table. She knows that food isn't just about nutrition, it's emotional, personal, and can be tied up with stress and fear. We're excited to have her on today to talk about how we help people feel more at ease with food, figure out what their bodies actually need, and enjoy eating again. So with that, welcome, Lauren. We're so happy to have you.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Can you share a little bit about your background as a dietitian, especially your work with eating disorders and gut issues and food allergies before even joining Root?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So prior to Root, I feel like I wore a lot of different hats. I spent many years in the clinical setting, so in the hospital covering all sorts of floors, anywhere from the ICU to cardiac, med-surg, the psychiatric, oncology. I was all over the hospital. And then outside of the inpatient setting, I have many years of experience working in the outpatient world, so working with an eating disorder population, and then I also worked as a virtual dietitian for an allergy clinic.
The allergy clinic was a really important background, too, that we were looking for with Root, because there's food allergies and then there's food sensitivities, and understanding that distinction and where people are on that spectrum is helpful. And so how has that background and experience shaped the way that you practice functional nutrition today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wouldn't really have traded my time prior to Root for anything, because I feel like working in those different settings really has shaped me into the dietitian I am, learning a whole slew of body systems and being able to ask those really investigative questions to understand where the member is coming from and get to the root of why they're struggling. And I'm sure, like, if we're thinking about the inpatient setting, have you ever been in the hospital? You probably are not on your best day, and so you really haven't gotten great sleep and you're not feeling well. And the dietitian coming in and only having a few brief moments to speak with you, I'm sure that information doesn't really stick. And so being at Root, being able to have the 45 minutes plus the doctor and dietitian collaborative approach, I think is just so helpful to get really informed and dig deeper into what the member's struggling with.
Absolutely. And I know the doctors really appreciate having dietitian nutrition support with our work with every member. Starting from that initial assessment where you take a deep dive, can you talk a little bit about how you do the initial Root nutrition assessment?
Yeah. So when I'm doing a nutrition assessment, I'm not just looking at what someone eats, I'm really paying close attention to how they're eating and then their overall relationship with food. So this is going to include things like whether we're cutting out entire food groups, chronically undereating, skipping meals intentionally or even unintentionally. I will also look at meal timing. So are we regularly eating throughout the day, or does it look more like grazing here and there without any real structure? Another big piece that we're investigating is tuning into the hunger and fullness cues. So do you recognize when you are actually hungry, or have those signals really become muted over time? All of these patterns give us insight into whether food feels as a supportive part of their day or if it's something that's causing stress and confusion. So the overall assessment's really about more than just nutrition. It's about understanding the behaviors and beliefs behind the food choices.
Yes. One thing we see a lot is people avoiding certain foods for years. Sometimes it's because they had past or current symptoms or from test results they ordered online a long time ago, like those IgG food allergy kits, which are not ones that we use at Root. Because we see people get this result and then tend to avoid their favorite foods and become having a more and more restrictive diet without anyone really unpacking where that came from and if it's still even a sensitivity for them. So how do you help someone in this kind of situation start to unpack that and rebuild confidence around those foods?
Yeah, actually, it's such a common theme. We often see people who have been avoiding whole food categories for years based on their symptoms because avoiding these foods make them feel better. Or, like you said, the food sensitivity test that they found online. They're looking for an answer. So while it often starts with really good intentions, an overly restricted diet can really backfire in the long run. So long-term restriction can really lead to nutrient deficiencies, reducing the microbiome diversity, and can even increase some food fear and anxiety around eating, all of which can actually worsen symptoms or even create new ones. So that's not the end game. The long-term plan or the nutrition plan should be something that you can live with, not a brief list of foods that you can tolerate or a list of foods that an online test said you should avoid. The goal is really to move slowly and safely towards more food freedom. And this might look like introducing one food at a time while focusing on gut support, helping the nervous system, and then just rebuilding confidence through education and structure. I know at Root, helping members feel empowered in their choices is one of our core values.
Absolutely. And then that support in between visits that you provide is helpful too, because you're not just eating when you're talking to nutritionists. So when you're reintroducing things, it's really helpful to have someone along for that journey. How does food restriction affect our body's hunger signals and cravings?
Ooh, I love this question. So when we think about food restriction, like really cutting back on what we're eating or skipping meals, what actually happens is the body goes into a survival response. So from a metabolic standpoint, if you're not giving your body enough fuel, it kicks into gear to try to protect you. One of the biggest ways it does this will be to drive up cravings. So your body will look for quick sources of energy, like sugar or refined carbohydrate, because those give you that fast hit of glucose. So when you're depriving your body, you're not going to have the whereabouts to think like, oh, hummus and carrots sound good. You're going to want something quick. Basically, what your body's hunger signals get louder, the more intense, because it's responding to that deprivation. So this isn't really a flaw. It's natural.
Yes. And so you become underfueled, and that leads to your body's natural physiologic response, which is to get energy, and your brain needs energy. And that's when the craving signals happen. What are some other examples of underfueling?
Yeah, this is actually a cascade and really goes through all the body systems. So nutrition really has a profound impact on how the body functions, especially when it comes to hormonal and metabolic health. Just thinking of some examples that we dive deeper into Root, when someone isn't eating enough or frequently skipping meals, we can see disruptions in the HPA axis, so that stress response leading to altered cortisol levels. We can see burnout or delayed recovery after stress and workouts. Underfueling can also impact the thyroid. That's a big one we dive into at Root. So undereating will downregulate that T3, the active thyroid hormone, which will slow metabolism and then contribute to symptoms like fatigue, cold intolerance, hair thinning. Another one I like to speak to members about is the reproductive health. So underfueling can lead to missed or absent periods, often a sign that your body just doesn't feel safe. And then if we're thinking about underfueling from a gut health perspective, restriction or even monotonous eating patterns, so eating similar things day in and day out, can really reduce that microbiome diversity, which is going to impact digestion, your mood, your immune system. And then also the gut motility. So that peristalsis motion, the waving motion, where food will move through the system, can be interrupted, also impacting your migrating motor complex, so the sweeping mechanism that goes through your system to clear undigested food and bacteria. All of these things being disrupted will lead to digestive issues such as bloating, nausea, pain, and irregular bowels.
If you are identifying one or more of these patterns, how do you work with the person to improve their relationship with food?
Yeah. So at Root, we really start with when a member is struggling with their relationship with food, starting with a open, non-judgmental conversation. So really speaking to just meeting exactly where they're at, recognizing that food is personal and oftentimes tied to deeper beliefs or past experience. So the first goal needs to be creating a safe and trusting dialogue. Next would be focusing on what needs to be added. So rather than focusing on restriction or an elimination, it's helpful to lean into more of that addition mentality. And what that means when we're speaking at Root, we're going to talk about adding in more phytonutrients, more color, more variety, more enjoyment, just more ease of creating that Root plate. Another thing I like to talk to members about is this bike ride analogy. I'm sure if one of my members, you've heard me say this, but our health is not a linear path. And so if you're thinking of a bike ride, there's going to be some times where it's just easy and you can pedal smoothly. And then other times that pedaling is going to be a little bit harder because you're going uphill and you're going to need more tools in your toolkit. So you're testing to figure out where you're at. Sometimes that bike ride's you're going to get a flat tire. It's going to be really hard. If I think about this in my personal life, I would say, as a dietitian, I feel like I have a good handle on nutrition. But then come postpartum, after having my babies, I feel like the wheels fell off on my bike. I was grazing throughout the day. I needed to eat one-handed meals. There was no way I was cooking breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I didn't need to start my entire bike ride over again. I just really needed to pick up where I was, have true conversations, and navigate that path and find systems that worked for me where I was at that point.
Love that personal story. Even dietitians need dietitians sometimes. So as a physician, I do see symptoms that I think are related to nutrition, whether it's what someone's eating, if it's a sensitivity or gluten or not eating enough or eating patterns, as you suggested. What are some of the symptoms or lab results we commonly see at Root that might be linked to nutrition or dietary habits?
Sure. A big one we will see is doing the root cause panel. So seeing depleted micronutrients is actually really common, but can give us some concrete insight into why things like managing cravings or maintaining energy can be so difficult. Seeing disrupted thyroid, insulin resistance, low ferritin, low vitamin D levels, these are all really common, all of which can impact energy levels and can lead someone to feeling fatigued. And the idea of cooking a meal, a nutrient-dense meal, doesn't sound that great when you're feeling that overwhelmed or that fatigued. I think it's just really helpful to recognize that these aren't vague symptoms. They're really tied to real measurable imbalances in the body. Another one we'll often utilize is microbiome testing or stool testing to uncover potential dysbiosis or overgrowth, all of which can play a big role into maybe the weight management picture or some of the sugar cravings that a member might be having.
And then there are certain conditions that tend to have a higher prevalence of eating disorders or unhealthy relationships with food. One of those that we see commonly at Root is PCOS, or polycystic ovarian syndrome. Can you speak to a little of what you've observed here?
Yeah, PCOS very common at Root, something we see fairly often. And I think honest conversations, just even the research that women that are diagnosed with PCOS engage in disordered eating behaviors at a 4 times higher rate than women without PCOS. And so I've met many women who have seen conventional doctors, and the recommendation that they're given to help manage their PCOS is lose weight, which is so frustrating if that's the only sentence. Weight It can absolutely be part of the conversation for PCOS management, but I think it's really important to take into account strategies for sustainable weight loss, like addressing hurdles within PCOS, the insulin resistance, the cravings, body image concerns, hormonal and mental health, such as anxiety and depression, which are also at a higher prevalence in women with PCOS compared to the general population. So weight loss conversations can't simply be about calories in, calories out. Other metabolic factors need to be considered: genetics, metabolic issues, gut health. All of these things need to be addressed and dove deeper into.
Yes, and sometimes nutrition is actually affecting mental health as well. And the things that you do support things like anxiety, because if your blood sugar is imbalanced, you're going to feel more anxious symptoms. It's a cortisol response to imbalanced blood sugars. And so it is all tied together. Women with PCOS may be more likely to have issues with mood or anxiety, and they may also have more unhealthy relationships with food statistically, as you mentioned with the study, and it's all connected. So this multi-pronged approach, just as you described, is exactly what's needed in an effective long-term approach. What are 2 to 3 takeaways you'd like people to remember about their relationship with food and how to make lasting, sustainable changes?
Sure. So instead of focusing on food restriction, we can focus on that addition mentality, meaning we're looking for ways to add more color, more flavor, more variety, overall more nourishment, not just for physical health, but also just mental health. So bringing back the joy to what we're eating. Another takeaway I would say when we're thinking about our relationship with food is nutrition is really one of the most powerful tools we can use to support our health. And the good news is it doesn't have to be overly complicated. I can promise you, 90% of my meals would not make it onto any form of social media. They're not pretty. But these simple, balanced meals can really support hormone health, boost energy, feed the gut microbiome, reduce inflammation. And because these simple meals can all come together, we don't need to overthink every single bite.
Thank you. That's great. So to work with Lauren, you can join Root as an individual or talk to your employer about adding Root as a health benefit. Thank you, Lauren, for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Get to the Root podcast. If you found value in today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, share it with someone who might benefit, and leave us a review. For more resources and to connect with us, visit rootfunctionalmedicine.com. Remember, your health journey starts with understanding the root cause. Join us next time.